Reporters continued to follow the SUV, with microphones extended and questions pouring from their lips like salt on a wound. What a nightmare. How had Nikki's life turned into this? In one regard, this was an answer to prayers she'd thought had fallen on deaf ears. Her brother was home. Yet, in another regard, it was a worst-case scenario. There were so many questions surrounding Bobby's abduction at the hands of terrorists, his escape, and his service to the military. How can those reporters live with themselves? Nikki's gut churned with disgust as she turned her gaze away from the spectacle behind them. They've no clue about how their assumptions can destroy lives. Maybe they do, Bobby muttered, the dullness returning to his gaze. He'd been like this since they'd reunited in Colombia 2 weeks ago. What he'd gone through at the hands of cruel terrorists was something she couldn't fathom. He needed time to heal and recover. Nikki had contacted the military about the situation after she'd confirmed her brother was indeed alive. Sticking to protocol, the Navy had flown Bobby and Nikki from Colombia to a base in Norfolk. Normally, the military would have spent a considerable amount of time debriefing Bobby, but Nikki had managed to get the best lawyers and buy them some time. All of that was because Bobby had insisted he wasn't ready to talk about what he'd been through yet. One look at the fear on his face, and Nikki had relented, doing everything in her power to help her brother. But she knew she couldn't hold the Navy off much longer. For good reason, his superiors wanted to debrief him, to find out what he knew, how he'd gotten away, if he'd shared any secrets while being tortured. Bobby claimed his service commitment had ended and that he had no obligation to the military. But Nikki knew it would be hard to convince others of that in the long term. She'd promised her Navy envoy that as soon as Bobby was released from the hospital, he'd answer their questions. At first, Nikki had tried to keep Bobby at home and had found a doctor who made house calls. But her brother's behavior had worsened until it became more than she could handle. After he broke half the china in her cabinet, she knew help was needed, beyond what she or family friend Roz Jennings could offer. The hospital had seemed like the right option. He'd get better care there. But now it was clear that what he really needed was rest and privacy. She'd rented a house away from the media, away from the military, away from everything that seemed to stress her brother out. Her envoy would be furious, but Nikki couldn't turn Bobby over just yet. He was still too weak. Her brother was physically here, yet in some other way Nikki felt as if she'd lost him. The man sitting next to her seemed like anyone but her fun-loving, protective older sibling. He didn't playfully tug her brown hair or roll his eyes when Nikki talked about her dreams of becoming a missionary. Of course, she didn't talk about that anymore. The new Nikki knew better than to trust a God who'd only been silent in her times of need. Her worldview had changed, and not only because of the ordeal with her brother. Bobby wasn't the only one who'd discovered that being willing to give your life for a cause didn't result in any reciprocated loyalty or favor. Nikki flinched as something in the air changed. Whatever it was so subtle that she couldn't pinpoint the cause. She only knew that some kind of internal alarm was sounding. The media. They must be tailing them still. Or what if it was a military car? She hadn't violated any laws by spiriting Bobby away, had she? She didn't think so, but she felt unsettled by the evasion she'd planned. Nikki glanced behind her. For now, it was the media in pursuit. Several vans with news station emblems emblazoned on their doors followed at a close clip. "They're not leaving us alone," she muttered. "We'll lose them," the guard in the front seat said. Tension stretched across Nikki's every muscle. Lose them? That seemed impossible. The people following them knew what kind of story Americans were hungry for. They were willing to do anything to get their hands on Bobby and twist his words. Their only objective was to make him a bad guy instead of a victim. The driver cut through the streets of D.C., but the trail of paparazzi still remained behind them. Nikki had asked Roz to do some research, and this security firm, Steel Guard, was supposed to be one of the best in the country. They guarded senators and diplomats. She had no choice but to trust them now. The driver took several quick turns, and finally the string of